We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. In March 2022, there were almost 60,000 Australians on the home care package waitlist. The now Health Minister said that waitlist was, quote, a national disgrace. But, Prime Minister, under Labor, the home care package waitlist has skyrocketed, with more than 87,000 Australians now waiting. If a waitlist of 60,000 was a national disgrace, what words describe Labor's crisis of more than 87,000 today?
Order. The call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I'll ask the Minister to supplement. But can I say this? We introduced and passed through this parliament on a bipartisan basis the most significant reforms to aged care this century. We did that just last year. And we did that after a Royal Commission described aged care in one word in its interim report, and that one word was neglect. Neglect, in one word. When we went to the 2022 election saying that we would put the nurses back into nursing home, we were mocked by those opposite. Today, 99% of the time there is a nurse in an aged care facility. That is a good thing. We have been working through all of these issues, including the reform to both aged care residential and home care. We have been working that through and making an enormous difference, and it has been positive with the ageing of the population. We have put in—
Order. The member for Herbert.
We have put in additional investment after what was a period of a decade of neglect by the former government.
Call to the Minister for Health and Aged Care and the Minister for the NDIS.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the opposition leader for her question. Look, over the last 5 years, we have, as a country, pretty much doubled the number of home care packages in the system, from about 150,000 to a little more than 300,000, and we'll need to continue increasing those home care package numbers very significantly for really as long as any of us are in this parliament, because the oldest of the baby boomers, we know, are now pretty much hitting the average age of entry to the home care package system, and in a few years' time will hit the average age of entry into the residential aged care system, which is why we, particularly under the leadership of former Minister Wells in this area, had to compress pretty much a decade of reform into just 3 years, not helped, of course, by the budget cuts that the opposition leader initiated as the Minister for Aged Care through the 2016 MyEFO, that actually took money out of aged care, didn't redeploy it to reform, but actually just returned it to general revenue, obviously contributing to the situation that led to the Royal Commission in the first place. So it doesn't really sound very nice in the opposition leader's mouth to complain about the situation in aged care that we have had to fix over the last 3 years, after a decade not just of neglect, Mr Speaker, but of actual cuts initiated again by the now opposition leader when she had responsibility for this portfolio.
When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Griffith.
Mr Speaker, my question is for the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to cut student debt, and what is the impact on young Australian TAFE and university students?
We call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Griffith for her question. My favourite member for Griffith for some time, it must be said. It must be said. And I'm pleased that that comment has got for some time.
Order.
I'm pleased that it's got some bipartisan support across this chamber, that comment, Mr Speaker. Now, we are very pleased that the first piece of legislation to pass this House was, as we said we would do, when I launched the policy in Adelaide in the electorate of Sturt last November to cut student debt by 20%. This will cut the debt of 3 million Australians by an average of $5,500 $1,000 each. And it will make reforming the system to make repayments fairer as well, making that long-term difference. Now, last week I met with some young Australians in the last week in Parliament House here who went through exactly what difference it would make to them. Emma from the University of Canberra will save $8,000. Alex from Monash Uni saving more than $20,000. But importantly as well, Jennifer, Izzy and Lauren came in from the Canberra Institute of Technology. Now, they have saved tens of thousands of dollars between them on their TAFE courses because, of course, they're getting some access to free TAFE. But in addition to that, it's made an enormous difference. Jennifer said this: "I am now so relieved I will be saving about $8,000 from $40,000 of debt. It makes such a huge difference. I feel such a huge weight off my shoulders, and I really feel I can focus on my course, finishing my course and getting into my industry." Izzy said, "When I looked at the amount I had to pay, it really was scary to look at, but I knew I had the opportunity to get a vet loan to do what I'm passionate about. Now, with the 20% cut in student debt, it's really opened up many doors and opportunities. And Lauren, the 20% means quite a bit to me as I'm currently trying to save for my first home. This makes an enormous difference. Cutting student debt represents a practical difference for their futures. And it's precisely what I said during the election campaign when I said no one held back and no one left behind. This is opening up opportunities for Australians to undertake a university or a TAFE course, but also not penalising them to do so. It's a question of intergenerational equity, and I'm very pleased that it has now passed the House and will pass the Senate later today.
The call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. On February the 28th, the Prime Minister told Australians, quote, "Under Labor, all you'll need to see a GP is your Medicare card, not your credit card." But on TV this morning, the Health Minister said, quote, "We never said there would be 100% bulk billing." Prime Minister, how many Australians have had to use their credit card to see a GP since the day you promised they wouldn't need to?
Order. The Minister for Social Services will not interject, and the Prime Minister now has the call.
I am absolutely delighted to talk about Medicare, Mr Speaker, because what the member opposite has said is to quote us at the Launceston launch in the electorate of Bass, when we launched our tripling of the bulk billing incentive for all Australians. Now, that followed our previous budget where we tripled the bulk billing incentive for concession card holders. That has resulted in 90% of those concession card holders seeing a doctor for free with bulk billing.
Order.
Then of course,
members on my left. No.
What we did.
We're just going to pause for a sec. We're not just going to have this free for all, beginning of question time. We're just going to allow people to ask questions in silence, and then allow the respect to the person answering the question as well. We're not going to continue this way. So we're getting into good habits early. Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
So this $8.5 billion investment in Medicare, which we said at the time would lift bulk billing rates for every patient to 90% by 2030, cutting costs for Australians, improving care and supporting GPs. That's the policy that we announced. And you might remember, Mr Speaker, that before I'd finished that speech in the electorate of Bass, with the now member for Bass introducing us there,
the Prime Minister will pause, and I will hear from the Leader of the Opposition.
On relevance, Mr Speaker, I know the Prime Minister is now saying his promise had terms and conditions, but the question is how many Australians have to use their credit card to see a doctor?
Order. resume your seat. I'm just going to remind the Leader of the Opposition that she can raise points of order, but it's got to be pretty clear in what the point of order is, not adding extra material into her statements. The Prime Minister was asked about his comments. He is talking about the announcement, what the question was, and he's giving context to the House, and I'm listening carefully about the electorate he was in, what he said about this announcement, so he couldn't be more directly relevant, but I'm sure he'll continue and make sure he is.
I certainly will, Mr Speaker. And you may well recall, Mr Speaker, that policy being matched almost before I'd finished my speech. And at the time, we put out written documentation. We had costed policies, Mr Speaker. I'm not surprised that the opposition don't recognise this territory. But we had costed policies of $8.5 billion to deliver to lift bulk billing rates to 90% by 2030. The timeline hasn't changed, the investment hasn't changed, the modelling is the same. The question is, has the coalition changed their position? Because when I made the announcement on the date that the members suggested, of course they said they would back it. And now it appears that they don't back it. Now it appears they don't support it, which isn't surprising, given that when they came into office last time, as we reminded people once or twice during the election campaign, they tried to abolish bulk billing altogether by introducing a Medicare co-payment. And one of the big differences in this chamber is that we on this side value Medicare. Those on that side are led by someone who said if you don't pay for it, you don't value it. If you don't pay for it, you don't value it. Well, we value Medicare, we'll defend Medicare, and they'll always undermine it.
Give the call to the honourable member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to deliver on its commitment to help Australians with student debt, and what has been the response?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the magnificent member for Melbourne for her question. There are 35,000 people in the electorate of Melbourne who are particularly happy this afternoon because we've just voted to cut their student debt by 20%. As I said yesterday, young people don't always see something for them on the ballot paper, but they did this year and they voted for it in their millions. On the 3rd of May, Australia voted to cut student debt by 20%, and today so did we. Mr Speaker, we promised that this would be the first bill that we introduced into this new parliament, and we did that last week. About an hour and a half ago, we passed that legislation through this House, and now it heads to the Senate. As the Prime Minister just said, this will help 3 million Australians. A lot of those are young Australians, just out of TAFE, just out of university, maybe just out of home, certainly just getting started. They're teachers, nurses, tradies, doctors, paramedics, midwives, vets, social workers, engineers, architects, IT workers and lots more. The average HECS debt today is about 27 grand. What that means is when this legislation passes, it will cut their debt by about 5.5 grand. And if you've got a debt today of 50 grand, and there's lots of people in that boat, it will cut your debt by $10,000. That's a big deal. And it's not the only thing that this legislation does. It also makes structural changes to the way the repayment system works, to make it fairer and to help Australians with the cost of living. It lifts the minimum amount that you have to earn before you start repaying your student debt from $54,000 to $67,000. So you start paying off your uni degree when uni starts to pay off for you. It also reduces the minimum amount that you have to repay every year. If you earn 70 grand a year, it will reduce the amount that you repay every year by $1,300. And that's real cost of living help. It means more money in your pocket, not the government's, when you need it. It's something that Bruce Chapman, the architect of HECS, has described as the most important thing that's happened to the system in 35 years. And, Mr Speaker, this is all happening because of this Prime Minister. Because in November last year he promised to cut student debt by 20%. And because on the 3rd of May Australians voted for this in their millions. And today, because of what we have just done here, we are one step closer to making this a reality.
Before I call the honourable member for Wentworth, I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today are students participating in Regional Development Australia's Central West 10 for 10 Leadership Dialogue. We're being hosted by the honourable member for Calare, and I'm also advised that present in the gallery today is Mr Jason Falinski, the former member for Mackellar. Welcome back to Question Time. Give the call to the honourable member for Wentworth.
My question is for the Deputy Prime Minister. Last week, the US Navy told Congress that its submarine production continues to be around half the level needed for the US to be able to supply Virginia-class submarines to Australia by 2032. Given the real risk that the US won't be able to double its production in time, what is the government's alternative plan to ensure that Australia has the capability it needs? And if we don't have an alternative plan, why not?
With the call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. When we signed the optimal pathway with the United States and the United Kingdom, we were aware of the challenges of US production and sustainment of Virginias and the need to lift that production to see more Virginias in the water for the US Navy in order to create the space whereby Australia would be able to acquire Virginia-class submarines from the United States in the early 2030s as part of the pathway to Australia acquiring a nuclear-powered submarine capability. Now, let me just to put that in context, what we saw going back and forth in terms of the way in which the Coalition were managing our future submarine acquisition in the decade that they were in power really left us with a capability gap, which is being filled by the acquisition of those Virginia-class submarines in the early 2030s. And that goes to the very question of what a former member for Wentworth often talks about is whether or not there should be a plan B, and indeed the former member for Wentworth was part of what was going on with the Coalition as one of the three Prime Ministers as part of that government. The issue with that government then was that they were completely focused and obsessed with plan Bs. They were in and out of a deal with Japan, then in and out of a deal with France, and it was the better part of the entirety of their government before they ended up settling on the arrangement with the United States. Now, and with the United Kingdom through AUKUS. Now, when you consider that acquiring a nuclear-powered submarine capability is a challenge which is measured in decades, if you are focused on a plan B, and there is always a chopping and changing, that is not a decision to walk down the path of plan B. That is a decision not to have a capability at all. I mean, unless you stick to a plan for longer than a couple of years, which the Coalition were unable to do, which the former member for Wentworth was unable to do, then you don't get a capability at all.
The Deputy Prime Minister has concluded his answer. Order. Don't need the sound effects either. Give the call to the honourable member for Deakin.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Assistant Treasurer. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to help young Australians pay off their student debts faster and get ahead?
Give the call to the Assistant Treasurer and the Minister for Financial Services.
I thank the member for Deakin for his question. As a former school teacher, I know that the member for Deakin understands firsthand the transformative power of education. His experience is an asset to this parliament, and I'm sure his time as a teacher also prepares him well for the raucous nature of the House. The member was elected by the people of Deakin to deliver real cost-of-living relief for his electorate and to deliver a 20% cut to HECS debts for the over 23,000 students in his community who will benefit from the bill that passed the House just over an hour ago. Those 23,000 students in the member for Deakin's electorate join over 28,000 in my own electorate of Fraser and 3 million Australians around the country who are set to benefit from the $16 billion of student debt being wiped by our government. The Prime Minister said that a re-elected Albanese Labor government would wipe 20% of all student debts. He said this would be the first bill that we would introduce in the new parliament. And guess what? That's exactly what we've done. Last week, Minister Clare introduced the Universities Accord, cutting student debt by 20% Bill 2025 to the House. Once the law passes, the ATO will start implementing the measure to wipe debts based on what they were on 1 June 2025 before indexation. Beneficiaries don't need to do a thing. The ATO will text you when your debt has been reduced. Combined with last year's changes to indexation, the Albanese government is removing around $20 billion in student debt. But we're not stopping there. We also pledged to make it easier for people with student debt to enter the housing market by asking regulators to review lending rules. That work is done. APRA and ASIC have finalised the guidance the Treasurer requested in February. APRA has now made amendments to guidance to banks to remove help debt from debt-to-income reporting, and also to clarify that it may be reasonable for banks to omit help debt from serviceability assessments where a borrower is expected to pay off their help debt within 12 months. ASIC has updated its regulatory guidance to acknowledge the income-contingent nature of help payments. This will help thousands of students and graduates across the country who have invested in their education and now want to invest in a home. We're tackling the housing challenge on all fronts. That's how the Australian government is helping young Australians pay off their debt, enter the housing market and build their future.
The Manager of Opposition Business.
Yeah, the Minister was reading extensively from a document there and asked him to table.
Was the Minister reading from confidential documents? Look, order. I want to order. I want to nip this in the order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. I want to nip this in the bud. I don't want any more of this. Stop reading. Everyone reads in this place. I read documents all the time. I read speeches out. We just don't need that, and particularly on ministers and people who are reading questions. It's a two-way street, so we're not going to have that anymore. Order. And the call goes to the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. On February 28,
order. The member for Chisholm is warned. We're going to start the question again. The member for Lindsay is going to be heard in silence. She's going to be given that respect. And we're not going to have any comments. Because I'd like the member for Spence. Order. I'm just going to hear from the member for Lindsay. She'll begin a question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. On February 28th, the Prime Minister promised Australians that to see a GP, all they would need was their Medicare card, not their credit card. Is that still the Prime Minister's position?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for her question, and I encourage the opposition over the next 3 years to double down and keep digging when it comes to Medicare, and to keep criticising the policy that they themselves adopted on that very day. On that very day, Mr Speaker, we were somewhat surprised, I must say, in Launceston, that when we came off stage, before I even did any discussion with the journalists after we'd launched the policy and gave them the documentation, that the opposition had already agreed to that policy and matched it. And if they read the documents that we released on that day, what they would see was that it was fully costed, $8.5 billion over the forwards, that it was due to come in to operation later this year, and that it would provide for bulk billing rates to rise to 90% by 2030. And that it was based upon the experience that we'd had at the previous budget, where we'd introduced the bulk billing incentive, tripling it, the largest investment at the time
Well, there can only one point of order that the member's going to take on relevance. She asked a question about the Prime Minister's statement that he made on the 28th of February. He's talking exactly about that statement, about what he announced. So I fail to see how there could possibly be a question on relevance. You want a yes-no answer. I can't give you that. So I'll give you one more chance. Given that I've said that the Prime Minister is being directly relevant,
whether it will be on relevance. I'm still going to stay on relevance because I asked him specifically if his position was that Australians would still only need their Medicare card, not
resume
their
your seat. I know, but this is... You would like a direct answer to that, Member for Lindsay. You'd like a yes-no to that, right? Well, I can't. Order. No, it's the same thing. I can't help you with that because the standing orders don't allow me to direct the Prime Minister to answer the question how you'd like it to be answered. But if you're asking a question about a statement and the Prime Minister's reading the statement about that and he's not talking about anything else, he's being very directly relevant. So I may follow, and I've got a list of them here, Leader of the Opposition, about all speakers that have refused to take points of order. We can go through those lists, but at this stage I'm just giving everyone fair warning, unless it's about the person not being on topic, not because you don't like the answer, I'll start to not take the points of order. So while the Prime Minister is giving direct conference, I just want everyone to be crystal clear moving forward. Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I did show my Medicare card quite a bit during the election campaign, you might have noticed. And for those opposite who wanted a yes or no answer, you know what the people of Australia answered on May 3rd? They answered yes. They answered yes to saving Medicare.
Order.
They answered yes to increasing bulk billing. They answered yes to another 50 urgent care clinics on Medicare. They answered yes to increased mental health care. They answered yes to increase youth mental health facilities as well. They answered yes to the idea that we value Medicare and we reject. They said no to the idea that if you don't pay for it, you don't value it. They said a direct no to the ideology put forward by those opposite, and they said yes, we do judge a society by how it looks after the most vulnerable. And the fact that at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, whether it was Kerry Packer after he had a heart attack, myself after I had a serious car accident, or my mum, an invalid pensioner, we got the same treatment. The same treatment because of Medicare.
Call to the member for Newcastle.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government's cheaper medicines policy delivering more choice, lower costs and better health care for women across Australia?
Call to the Minister for Health, Ageing, Minister for Disability and the NDIS.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for Newcastle. On more than one occasion she reminded me that you can't be serious about strengthening Medicare if you're not serious about supporting women's health, because women consume about 60% of health services in this country, often not because they're sick, but because they're women looking after their reproductive health and, by extension, supporting the reproductive decisions the broader family makes, or because they're going through menopause or perimenopause. And a number of Senate inquiries in the last term of Parliament, Mr Speaker, lifted the lid on the years of neglect of supporting women in those areas of our healthcare system. There had not been a new oral contraceptive pill added to the PBS for more than 30 years. Not a new endometriosis medicine added to the PBS for more than 30 years, and not a new menopause hormone treatment added for more than 20 years. Not because they hadn't come to market, they just hadn't been added to the PBS, forcing women to pay top dollar for those new cutting-edge medicines. Well, Mr Speaker, we changed that. In the last several months, we've added 3 new contraceptive pills, 3 new menopause hormone treatments and 2 new endometriosis medicines onto the PBS, saving women millions and millions of dollars that, frankly, they shouldn't have been having to shell out in the first place. The endometriosis medicine, for example, Ryeco, was costing women $3,000 a year, that cutting-edge, highly effective treatment for endometriosis. Now they pay barely 1/10 of that cost, Mr Speaker. But we are determined to do more because, to the Prime Minister's comments, the Australian people said yes to even cheaper medicines. And so, from the 1st of January, the maximum cost of a script will be slashed to $25, the same rate it was all the way back in 2004, Mr Speaker. This morning, the Prime Minister, Assistant Minister McBride and I met a young woman, Cara, who already in her early years is grappling with a number of chronic health conditions. She's on a number of medicines, Mr Speaker, and they really do put a dent in her household budget. One of those medicines is Slinda, a highly effective contraceptive pill that tens of thousands of women had been using for months and months and years, paying top dollar, that we added to the PBS earlier this year. Before that, women were paying $320 a year for that cutting-edge medicine. From the 1st of January, they'll pay just $75, a 3/4 cut in the price of that medicine. The reason why we are going so hard, Mr Speaker, on making medicines even cheaper is not just for the hip pocket. I mean, it's a benefit to cost of living, but also because it is so important for health. Trying to support Australians, make sure that they can fill every single script that their doctor says is important to keep them healthy.
Call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, how many Australians today are using their credit card to see a GP?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you. The answer to that, Mr Speaker, is because of those opposite and their undermining of the health system. Too many is the answer. Too many. Which is why we want 90% by 2030 to just use this little card here. This little card here. This little piece.
Order.
This piece of green and gold plastic, Mr Speaker.
Order. Yep, the Prime Minister will pause so I can hear the manager on the use of props on.
Well, point of order on the use of props. You've been very strict on this side of the House. He's missing one of his props. He didn't bring up the credit card as well.
Order. The member for Lindsay used the similar tactic yesterday. The Prime Minister, I'm sure, will look after that card carefully and will continue with his answer.
I will, Mr Speaker, because it's valuable. It's valuable. And everyone on this side of the House values their Medicare card. And I'll tell you what, Mr Speaker, every Australian values their Medicare card as well, except perhaps some of those over there. Except perhaps some of them over there. Now, you can imagine the Tactics Committee meeting this morning, Mr Speaker, sitting around and going, I know where they're vulnerable, Medicare. We think there's a bit of doubt out there in the community, Mr Speaker, about their attitude towards public health care, because they never want to talk about it. They never raise it. I mean, has the Prime Minister got a Medicare card? So that's why I brought it in, to confirm that that's the case, Mr Speaker.
Order.
But I tell you what, the 1.5 million Australians who've been to the not 50 but 87 urgent care clinics, all they have needed is their Medicare card. And one-third of those have been under the age of 15.
Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? No. Order. The Leader of the Opposition, a point of order.
On relevance, Mr Speaker, it was a very tight question. How many Australians today are using their credit card to see a doctor? Perhaps the Prime Minister would undertake to come back with those figures if he doesn't have them.
Order.
But he does need to acknowledge
that. Yes, it was a tight question, and I believe the Prime Minister answered it directly the way he gave an answer to it. And perhaps if he wants to give further information regarding numbers or information, it may assist the Leader of the Opposition. but he just needs to be directly relevant to the question, which he is very much doing so.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. And I am giving some numbers here to assist the opposition. 1.5 million. That's the number of Australians who've been to Medicare urgent care clinics. 94. That's the number that support Medicare urgent care clinics. 27 million. That is the number of Australians who support Medicare. All of us here who support bulk billing. The truth is, at the election campaign, like at other times, we have campaigned to strengthen Medicare. That is what we have done since we came into office in 2022. Those opposite, when they came into office, the last time government changed, and we have no doubt that the same thing would have occurred as well, we had an attempt to introduce a Medicare co-payment and abolish bulk billing altogether. We had $50 billion ripped out of the public hospital system. We had a failure to train enough GPs. We had a complete failure when it comes to aged care, summed up by that one word of neglect. We on this side of the chamber are very proud that Labor created Medicare, will strengthen Medicare, and that's what we do each and every day. Each and every day. And in the legislation that we've had, of course, been talking about this week for cheaper medicines, that's a part of our strengthening Medicare.
Give the call to the member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is acting on climate change and harnessing Australian sun and wind in our national interest? What other policies is the government being asked to consider, and why is unity on this issue so important?
The call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker, and thanks to my honourable friend for the question, and congratulations to her on her resounding re-election. The honourable member asked me about harnessing renewable energy, and that's what Australian households are doing every day, particularly under the Albanese government's cheaper home batteries policy, Mr Speaker. And I think the House might need an update on how that's going, Mr Speaker. I can tell the member and the House that 16,302 households have now taken up cheaper home batteries in the last 4 weeks. The policy's been operating 4 weeks today. 16,302 households. And as the House might have determined by now, that number is increasing by about 1,000 houses a day. And that means that those households that are putting on the cheaper home batteries are benefiting, but so is the whole grid and the whole country, because we are building storage. In fact, those more than 16,000 batteries amount to 280 megawatt-hours of storage in our grid. That's 2 big batteries, Hornsdale big batteries, that we have added just in the last 4 weeks. Mr Speaker, that's good for the grid, that's good for everyone. That puts downward pressure on prices everywhere. Now, the member asked me about alternatives and the need for unity, and of course that's very important, and the House, and indeed both houses, are being provided with alternatives at the moment, because last night there was a vote in the Senate. One Nation called on a vote opposing net zero. Now, One Nation voted for that. That was their motion. 2 LNP senators voted for it. 2 LNP senators voted against it. And 22 LNP senators were outside playing Candy Crush. They didn't want to have anything to do with it, Mr Speaker. I mean, that's what you want, a bit of moral clarity about the big issues facing our country. Asked, are they for net zero or against net zero? 2 were for, 2 were against, 22 didn't know. Those 2, they cancelled each other out. It was net zero impact on the vote from those opposite. But that's the sort of impact we see from the leadership and the team opposite. Now, I'm going to do something slightly unusual, Mr Speaker. I'm going to approvingly quote a member opposite. The member for Lindsay, just before question time, was asked about this, and she said, well, this is Groundhog Day. And she's 100% right, because we have seen all this before. 9 years in office and they couldn't land an energy policy. 22 different goes. 9 years. We had the National Energy Guarantee. We had $3 million for a coal-fired power station which couldn't even deliver a feasibility study. Mr Speaker, they announced the winner of the feasibility study 2 days before opening the tender for the feasibility study. That was the sort of approach that those opposition took for 9 years, and now 3 years later they are no better. In fact, they are worse. They can't even discuss the pathway to net zero because they can't agree on the destination. It just goes to show you they haven't learnt the lesson from 9 years of delay, denial and dysfunction, and they would do it all again.
Before I call the member for Cowper, I just would like to recognise the Honourable Joel Fitzgibbon, who I'm told is in the gallery today as well, former member and former minister in this place. Call to the member for Cowper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Small Business. This government's economic mismanagement has delivered a record number of small business insolvencies that are now double the level seen in 2020 and 34,000 job losses in the last quarter alone. Will the minister admit this government's economic agenda has failed small business?
Call to the Minister for Small Business.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his question because it gives me an opportunity to really talk about small business, something that I'm passionate about and something that the members on this side of the House are all passionate about as well. And, Mr Speaker, as I said yesterday, small businesses operate right across the country. They are everyone from your Indian grocer, your local Indian grocer, to your hairdresser, to the place that you go to get your lunch. And I'm pleased to report, Mr Speaker, that there are, since we took office, since this Albanese Labor government took office in 2022, there are 800,000 more, 800,000 new small businesses operating right across Australia since we took office, Mr Speaker. 800,000 more. And they comprise of female-led businesses, around 35% are female-led. Around 40% on average are led by migrants, people who are aspirational, who come to this country and who see starting up a small business as a way of making a life for themselves and for their families. Small businesses employ more than 5 million Australians, and they contribute more than $590 billion to our nation's economy every single year. I'll remind the member opposite that this is the government that last term introduced the very first National Small Business Strategy, which guides the ways in which we will work with state and local governments to address those issues.
The members on my left will cease interjecting. Member for Cowper on a point of order.
On relevance, Mr Speaker, the question was very tight. It was in relation to this government's economic mismanagement, insolvencies and job losses.
The minister was asked about the government's agenda and in particular details in that. She is providing relevant information. Just going to make sure that her remarks are directly relevant to the question she was asked.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And though I repeated it 3 times, I'll repeat it again, that there are 800,000 more small businesses since this government took office in 2022. Mr Speaker, in our first term, we set our priorities for small business, and that is to help them grow, to give them a level playing field. And I'll remind the House again, as I mentioned yesterday, that last week I convened our very first small business roundtable to feed into our reform agenda. I will continue listening to small businesses right across Australia, across the width at which they represent diverse sectors, but also along the breadth of them as well. Mr Speaker, the Albanese Labor government backs small business. Yeah. And if you have a look at the members behind me, small businesses operate in every single city and every single town across Australia, including the outer suburbs represented here on this side of the House, Mr Speaker. We will continue with our agenda to back small business because small business backs Australia.
Order. Give the call to the member for Pearce.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What progress has been made in the fight against inflation?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Speaker, I'm grateful to the member for Pearce for her question, but even more grateful to her community for sending her here to represent them in this place. An absolute champion from and for the West. Mr Speaker, the member for Pearce. Tomorrow we will get new inflation numbers for the June quarter and the month of June, and they'll attract a lot of attention and analysis. But what we already know is that we have made very substantial and now sustained progress together as Australians in the fight against inflation. Now, when we came to office, headline inflation was multiples of what it is now. It was much higher, it was accelerating, and interest rates were already rising. Inflation had a 6 in front of it under those opposite, and now it has a 2 in front of it. And so whatever the quarterly fluctuations or the monthly fluctuations, the direction of travel in inflation has been really clear. Both headline and underlying inflation are now back in the Reserve Bank's target band for the first time since 2021. And this progress has given the Reserve Bank the confidence to cut interest rates twice already this year, and the Reserve Bank Governor has said that more rate relief is a question of timing, not a question of direction. Underlying inflation in our economy is already half or almost half what we inherited. And any headline inflation number tomorrow with a 2 in front of it will confirm that we have been in the Reserve Bank's target band for a full year, Mr Speaker. Now, unlike other countries, we've made this progress on inflation without paying for it with substantially higher unemployment. In fact, this government has been able to get inflation down while presiding over the lowest average unemployment rate in the last half a century. No major advanced economy has achieved what Australia has: inflation in the low 2s, unemployment in the low 4s, and 3 years of continuous economic growth. And while inflation's been coming down in Australia, it's been going up in the US, Canada, the UK and New Zealand. So inflation is down, real wages are growing again, unemployment is low, we've delivered 2 surpluses, we've got the debt down, and interest rates have come down twice already this year, Mr Speaker. Now, we know that there is more work to do. We know the global environment's uncertain, we know that there are persistent structural issues in our economy, and we know that people are still under pressure. And that's why we're rolling out more cost of living relief this month. It's why we're legislating help with student debt this week, Mr Speaker, and it's why responsible economic management has been and will continue to be a defining feature of this Albanese Labor government.
Give the call to the member for Warringah.
To the Prime Minister, young people around the world want a say in the world, the environment they will inherit. The ICJ has now affirmed that nations have a legal obligation to prevent climate harm, and our productivity and economy are being battered by successive climate-fuelled events. Despite this, the government's defining action so far is to recklessly accelerate warming by approving new gas extraction to 2070. This negates any other policy. A minimum target of 75 by 35 and methane abatement is urgently needed. Will you be ambitious?
Good call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for her question on behalf of the government, and her position is very well established, and the crossbench have been very strong in their views. But in this government, we set our targets following a very rigorous process, which is outlined by the Climate Change Act, which, to be fair, members on the crossbench voted for. The Climate Change Act outlines world's best practice for setting a target. The government receives advice from the Climate Change Authority, considers it, considers the economic impact, considers the science, considers how that target might be achieved, and then announces the target. Now, we are, together with the United Kingdom, in taking a very similar approach. The target the government sets will be 2 things. It will be, importantly, achievable. I say to honourable members, as I've said elsewhere, it's very important that a target be able to be achieved. It is not a useful contribution to the debate to set a target without outlining how the country can actually achieve that target. Yes, ambition is very important, but so is achievability. Both those measures will be reflected in the target that the government announces, following the receipt of the Climate Change Authority advice, which we have not yet received, and we will follow the rigorous process outlined in the Climate Change Act.
Call to the member for Swan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Women. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting Australian women? What attitudes about women are standing in the way?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Local Government and the Minister representing the Minister for Women.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank very much the member for Swan for the question. It is fantastic
to see so many women of diverse backgrounds here in this chamber, in particular the member for Swan, science, engineering and over a decade in the mining industry. Since Labor came to government, the gender pay gap is at a record low, with women on average earning $217.40 more per week than they did in May 2022. We've also seen more women participating in the workforce than ever before, and supporting women isn't just a social benefit. We know that it is an economic benefit as well. It's why we've made gender equality an object of the Fair Work Act, why we've expanded paid parental leave to 6 months by 2026 and introduced 10 days paid domestic and family violence leave. These changes are possible when you have women around the table empowered to make decisions, and that hasn't always been the case. Let's not forget that it was a little over 10 years ago now that the former Prime Minister Abbott appointed only one woman to Cabinet and crowned himself Minister for Women. Thankfully, Mr Speaker, under this Prime Minister, that attitude within government is a thing of the past. I wish I could say the same of those opposite. Just today, we had the member for Longman claiming that quotas are a ridiculous practice and that men tend to be more drawn to vocations that involve maths and physical exertion. And I go on to quote the member for Longman, "Women in the main tend to be drawn to careers that involve women and care, like hairdressers, nursing, social workers and the like." Well, what an absolute crock. What a crock. People used to think that women were not drawn to this place, Mr Speaker. We have so many talented women in this place with a range of backgrounds, from engineers to doctors to CEOs to Paralympians and even pilots across opposite from me. This is exactly the attitude, member for Longman, that keeps wages for women low, stops them from putting their hands up to learn a trade or work in STEM, or represent their communities in this place. Those opposites simply do not get it. Those opposite are living decades in the past. First, it's net zero, and now it is your attitudes towards women. Well, I'm here to tell them that it is 2025. Climate change is real, and gender equality is a very good thing for this country.
The call to the member for Lyne.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management. Cat D funding was made available to primary producers on the 4th of July for New South Wales, Mid-North Coast and Hunter regions devastated by the May floods. Minister, why is Category D funding still unavailable for the many flood-impacted small businesses trying to recover, rebuild and restart? A funding recommendation made to governments at the same time as that for primary producers.
The call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Speaker. And I thank the member for the question, and I also thank her for her hospitality to both the Prime Minister and I, the Premier and various other New South Wales ministers in her electorate, and also the electorate of Cowper. The flood that we've seen there is obviously devastating to the community, and recovery is a long-term situation. I've been through it directly with my own community. We know recovery isn't days and weeks, it's months and years, which is why we've worked really hard and really closely with the New South Wales Government on a whole range of support and funding opportunities in that local community. Initially, we allowed 19 councils access to $1 million for a clean-up fund. We've allowed disaster recovery payments across 19 LGAs, including disaster recovery allowance, which is income support, across 12 LGAs. We've expended over $212 million on a whole range of income supports, over 170,000 applications across those 19 LGAs. Category D funding was available to rural land landholders, up to $10,000 to help with clean-up. There's been a range of other support measures put in place, including concessional loans and freight subsidies for primary producers. We have worked really closely with the New South Wales governments on a range of supports, including $25,000 grant supports for small businesses. To date, we've expended around $300 million with the New South Wales government on a range of supports across those 19 LGAs. We have said from day one that we will continue to work with local communities, with local councils, with the state government, with local, state and federal members in the area to ensure that supports continue over a period of time. As I've said directly to yourself and the member for Cowper, we stand ready, willing and able to work with New South Wales, particularly on this.
I haven't given anyone the call, but less than 30 seconds ago, the minister was talking about Category D funding, which was specifically asked for. You're going to have more than the point of relevance on that. If she's asked a question on Category D funding and she's giving information to the House, in that information, I'll out of courtesy, I'll give the point of order.
Speaker, I take your point, but it is a point on relevance. And I say this, Speaker, because I get the real empathy that the minister has for this. But the question was relating to Category D and small business, which is very normal in this process.
And she has 1 minute left to go. Whoever was interjecting then, I'm going to ask them to cease doing it. And if that I suspect, I have a feeling who it was, but I don't know. So, well, the member for Solomon is not assisting. People can raise points of order, but also the member for Page. The minister was being completely directly relevant, and I've just warned the House again. If this continues, I just won't take the points of order. The minister in continuation.
Thank you. There are currently $25,000 grants available to small businesses, and we have said from day one, the recovery coordinator on the ground there has said from day one that he wants to ensure that as many small businesses as possible register so that data and evidence can be provided to New South Wales Government if there are any additional supports needed. The Prime Minister and myself were on the ground during the initial event. In the days following, and I've been there in the weeks since that. I know firsthand what this means in local communities. I know the widespread impact, and I know that communities are going to be doing it tough for a period of time. We remain committed to working with the local council, with the state government and with local and state members to ensure, local, state and federal members, to ensure that we get this recovery phase right, and we will continue to work with the New South Wales Government on that.
The call to the member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the minister. I'll start again, Speaker. My question is to the minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation. How is the Albanese Labor government making the economy more resilient while providing good jobs as part of the government's future Made in Australia agenda?
Give a call to the Minister for Defence Industry, the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs and the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank the member for Lingiari for her question and congratulate her on being the first Aboriginal person to sit in the Speaker's chair this week. Well done. Cheers. Speaker, creating jobs and industries that support them is one of the golden threads that run through the history of the Australian Labor Party. From Curtin and Chifley's full employment and creation of the car industry, to the Hawke economic reforms and the Budden industry plans, the Prime Minister Albanese's vision for a future made in Australia is all about creating jobs and supporting families. And that's why we're committed to seizing the opportunities from the global move to net zero. Mr Speaker, we know the best renewable energy resources are in Australia, and nearly every critical mineral needed to power the clean energy economy of the 21st century reside in Australia. Copper, we've got it. Zinc, we've got it. Bauxite, we've got it. Cobalt, we've got it. Lithium, we've got it in abundance. Now, Mr Speaker, we're great at mining these resources, but the Australian people demand more. They want us to value add to them where possible and create well-paid, high-skilled manufacturing industries. And the Albanese Labor government is backing this vision with our transformational policy agenda, a $15 billion National Reconstruction Fund, production tax credits for renewable hydrogen and critical minerals, a $2 billion for Australia's aluminium smelters, and $1 billion for the Green Iron Investment Fund. Now, green iron is the foundation for the future of the global iron trade, and it's a generational opportunity to make Australia more prosperous, thereby reducing global emissions, and it was a key priority for Prime Minister Albanese's visit to China. Now, Speaker, the Albanese government understands that the world is changing, and that's why we're taking action. We recognise the opportunities that are in front of us and are committed to seizing the future to support high-growth, cutting-edge industries. Now, sadly, that support is not bipartisan. This week we saw the Coalition's climate change clown show back in town, and speaking of one of them, I withdraw.
Order. I've got two on your feet. The member for Wannon was first. I know where you're going. He was first. The minister's withdrawn that comment. I'm going to say to him, that is completely unacceptable. It's not helpful in debate. We had that last week as well. On that side, we're just going to draw a line in the sand. We're not commenting on people. The member for Wannon on a point of order.
Goes to relevance, Speaker. The question was very specific. It asked about what the Labor Party was doing in this area. It said nothing about the Coalition, and only a clown would answer like that.
The member for Wannon, no, resume your seat. I just said we're not having that. We're drawing a line in the sand. You were standing there at the dispatch box and I specifically referenced what happened before. You'll leave the chamber under 94A. That is, I don't know, next level. And you should know better. So I hope everyone's really clear. Good. The minister wasn't asked about alternative approaches or policies in his question. He was asked about how the government is making the industry more resilient and while making regarding employment. So he's going to return to that question and not talk about the opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. And as I was saying, our plan makes sure that Australians benefit from the global race to net zero. It's all about jobs, 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 which is the golden thread of the Labor Party. A future made in Australia is about seizing those job opportunities, particularly in regional communities like the member for Lingiari's and mine. It's about creating a more resilient economy, increasing our sovereignty and independence. The truth is, Mr Speaker, the Albanese government is getting on with the job and delivering for the Australian people. That's what people expect of their government, not climate wars, but a future made in Australia.
The call to the member for Ryan.
To the Minister for Resources. Australia is the world's second biggest exporter of global emissions after Russia. Last week, the International Court of Justice made it clear that Australia has international legal responsibility for its fossil fuel production, regardless of where the coal or gas is ultimately burned. Will the government stand up to coal and gas corporations and phase out these dangerous fossil fuels that are supercharging the climate crisis?
Call to the Minister for Northern Australia and the Minister for Resources.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And I thank the member for her question on this occasion. And I refer to the member's question. I would just like to point out the importance of Australia's role in the regional energy security. This is something that is perhaps not as well understood as it could be or even should be. Australia indeed does export gas and it does export coal. It also exports iron ore, it exports gold, it exports lithium, it exports a great many things that are essential to our economy, and indeed the three greatest exports of this country are iron ore, coal and gas, which add to hub prosperity, support regional communities, which people on this side of the chamber realise, as do those on the other side. It will remain integral to the economy for many years to come, and it will remain very important to hundreds of thousands of families around this country as the breadwinners and sometimes their partners go and participate in this industry, whether it be in fly-in, fly-out communities or drive-in, drive-out communities right around the country. But really importantly, and the question around energy— I'll keep going. Sorry.
Well, I need to be consistent with everyone. I know you, Alex. The minister is being directly relevant to the question, and I know you're not happy with the answer, Ms. Farine, but simply just can't have a situation where I don't like the answer. I'm going to take a point of relevance.
The question was about emissions. It was about Scope 3 emissions.
Resume your seat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In relation to gas, it will remain a very important part of Australia's economy for some time to come. You would have seen, and everyone in this House would have seen, the future gas strategy which the government will pursue. It is an important part of our role in not only providing fuel and security to Australians and Australian industry, but equally for ensuring we play our role in helping to provide the energy security for the region. And I might add that countries in this region, Japan, Korea and many others, adopted net zero targets well before this country did, well before those opposite, when they were in government, eventually sort of got there. And now, of course, they're trying to move back from that. But nonetheless, this government on this side is committed to net zero emissions, just like the government of Japan, just like the government of Korea is, and many others. And our fuels that we export to those communities will be a really important part of their transition. Transition pathways are going to be different for every country. In Australia, we will be able to transition more quickly because of the natural resources available to us through wind and solar. The vast spaces we have enable that. That is not the case for our friends in Japan and Korea and countries like them, where they simply do not have those abundant renewable resources. So in the meantime, we'll support them through our export industry, and that will be what is a really important part of Australia's participation in regional energy security.
The call the member for Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regional Development. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering cost-of-living relief to people living in the regions? What threats are there to delivering important cost-of-living relief?
The call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for his question and for the work he does in the community. But I also want to congratulate him on being appointed Special Envoy for Men's Health, a really important subject, particularly across rural and regional Australia. And I look forward to welcoming him to the mighty Eden Monaro next week. As Minister for Regional Development, I engage with communities right across the country, and I love seeing the diversity in our regions, the opportunities and the challenges that are unique to each of them. And, Mr. Speaker, the Albanese Labor government is focused on dealing with the cost of living pressures for people right across the country, particularly in our regions, no matter your postcode, because regional communities benefited from the tax cut we delivered in our first term, with another 2 tax cuts to follow. It puts more money back in our communities' pockets. That's a tax cut for every taxpayer up and down the income scale. Because we know regional people work hard for their money, and we want to support them to earn more and to keep more of what they earn. And at the recent election, Australians had a clear choice. The Albanese government, who had legislated tax cuts and a range of other cost of living supports, versus those opposite who committed to raising taxes. If they'd won, those opposites would be in here right now raising taxes for hard-working regional Australians. They'd be weakening the PBS, they'd be continuing to stall on investment in housing, and they'd be putting a nuclear reactor in the backyards of Aussies across the country. Instead, regional Australia voted for a strong Labor team, which includes the member for Leichhardt, the member for Gilmore, the member for Lingiari, the member for Ballarat, Bendigo, Brudden, Bass, Bullwinkle and many, many more. We have made medicines cheaper. We've made the largest investment in bulk billing. We've got 31 urgent care clinics open in our regions as part of our 87 that we've already opened across the country. And yes, Leader of the Opposition, all you need at an urgent care clinic is a Medicare card. There's one open in the members' electorate in Cessnock, which has seen more than 20,000 presentations. We've helped more than 30,000 people in regional Australia into home ownership through our regional home buyers guarantee. And I personally know as a small business owner that when you're an apprentice, every dollar counts, which is why we are delivering a $10,000 incentive payment to construction apprentices across the country. In the first week of this new term, we've introduced bills to cut student debt by 20%, and we're protecting the penalty rates of regional workers across the country. We have a lot to be proud of in cost of living relief that we've delivered for regional Australia, and we'll continue to do that in the next 3 years. Let's hope those opposite have learned a lesson and don't get in the way this time round.
Call to the Manager of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. On the front page of The Age today, it is reported that multiple CFMEU officials received gold bracelets as kickbacks from underworld crime figures. Also today on the front page of the Courier Mail, the CFMEU is openly threatening the Queensland Parliament. Can the Prime Minister advise the House what instructions his government has given to his hand-picked CFMEU Administrator Mark Irving regarding the lawless conduct of this union and its members across the country?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for his question. And of course, in the last parliament in 2022, the first question I got was about the CFMEU and construction from the then Leader of the Opposition. So it's taken a little bit longer, but it's the same pattern. But the difference is that my government has acted, unlike the former government. So unlike when I stood here as Prime Minister in 2022, after a period of 3 terms of the coalition, 3 terms in which clearly we have seen the evidence of corruption by some people in the CFMEU construction branch grow. We saw the power of people like John Setka grow beyond his state boundaries in Victoria. We acted. We acted. We intervened. We shut them down. They've been sacked. They got removed. They got removed. And that is absolutely critical because it's consistent. Because it's consistent with my government's approach, which is twofold. One is that trade unionists overwhelmingly are motivated by helping out issues like occupational health and safety, by helping out the wages and conditions of working-class people, of making sure that they get their fair share in areas like construction and mining. It's about workers going home to their families at the end of the day. And the role that unions have played in that have been critical. And that is why it is so disgusting and abhorrent that a small number of people have chosen to abuse their position to engage in conduct which is criminal. Criminal conduct should be subject to criminal penalties. That's not the instruction of anyone. That's called the law. That's called the law. And when those opposite raise the question about administrators, they remind people that we've put administrators in when they had secretaries like John Setka running the show and did absolutely nothing about it.
Order. Order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and Defence Personnel. How is the Albanese Labor government addressing the recommendations of the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide?
Call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Corangamite for her question and acknowledge her great advocacy for the veterans across her electorate and region. I've had the great pleasure of being able to meet many of the RSLs in her area, and it's been great to work with her on the progress of the hub that will be going into her region as well, because the member for Corangamite, like our entire government, is committed to providing the service and supports to the veteran and the veteran community that not only do they need, but what they deserve. That is so critically important. When we came into government, we inherited the circumstances where DVA was critically underfunded and under-resources. And indeed, to give credit to my predecessor, the member for Calare, who sits on the crossbench, he was calling it out even when they were in government. And so over the last 3 years, we have been able to achieve a great deal together. We've eliminated that claims backlog that we inherited because of the under-resourcing of DVA. We've also gone about acting on all of the recommendations that were contained in the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide's interim report. Critically, we have passed the Veterans Entitlement Treatment and Support Simplification and Harmonisation Act, moving from 3 different complex pieces of legislation supporting our veterans, moving from the middle of next year into one system. So it's easier for veterans and families to know what they're entitled to, easier for advocates to support them, and quicker for the Department of Veterans Affairs to process those claims and get veterans and their families the support that they need and they deserve. Crucially, when we received the final report of the Royal Commission in September last year, we acted swiftly. By December, we provided the government's formal response, agreeing in principle to 104 of the 122 recommendations, noting 17 of those recommendations for further work and establishing a task force in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet to work across government on how government would get about implementing these recommendations for our veteran community. Now we're building on what the Albanese government did in its first term. Beginning earlier this year, we legislated the establishment of the Defence and Veterans Service Commission. This implements Recommendation 122 of the Royal Commission, what the Royal Commission said was its most important recommendation. We've also appointed the Interim Commissioner into that role. The Department of Veterans Affairs has been undertaking the consultation needed on co-design for a new wellbeing agency to be established within the Department of Veterans Affairs. We campaigned when we were in opposition for the Royal Commission to be established, and we will work tirelessly now to ensure that the government's response to that Royal Commission will be implemented so that our nation's veterans continue to receive even more of the supports that they need and deserve.
Give a call to the honourable member for Ryan.
Thank you. My question is to the Prime Minister. Your government has placed over 14,000 sanctions against Russian individuals and entities, as well as sanctioning trade with Russia for their invasion of Ukraine. Netanyahu's genocidal assault on Palestine now means that more than 2 million people are at critical risk of starvation. Will you commit to applying equivalent sanctions to Israel as you imposed on Russia?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for his question, for her question. And of course, we don't sanction a state; we sanction individuals. And my government has sanctioned individuals. We've sanctioned the Minister for National Security, and we have sanctioned the Minister for Finance. We have done so. In part, just some of the comments that have been made by them as ministers, people who were on the fringes of Israeli politics but are now a part of the Netanyahu government. The Minister for National Security said this on the 27th of July. The only thing you should be sending to Gaza is shells to bomb, conquer, encourage immigration and win the war. That is what they had to say. The range of comments that have been made, including a soldier who killed a young Palestinian boy, reprehensible. The comments of the Minister for Finance, who has said Gaza will be totally destroyed, its Palestinian population will leave in great numbers to third countries. On the 6th of May, on the 21st of April, he said, we need to eliminate the problem of Gaza. On the 5th of February, he said, with God's help, we will work to permanently bury the dangerous idea of a Palestinian state. Mr. Speaker, we don't take these issues lightly, and what we don't do also is try to secure some domestic political advantage and put and damage social cohesion in this country through some of the actions which, frankly, some of the Greens political party actions have done. What we do is act in a principled way and in a way that is consistent. We condemn Hamas for their actions, and we condemn what is occurring in Gaza in breach of international law. That is the way that responsible adult governments act. That's the way that middle powers can have influence, and that's the way we can have a constructive role in what I want to see, which is an end to killing, whether it's of Israelis or Palestinians, and I want to see the creation of a two-state solution where both Israelis and Palestinians can win in peace and security with prosperity. We'll continue to work with other leaders around the world of like-minded countries with the objective of that. But I do say that Australians want two things. They want innocent people to stop losing their lives. The second thing that they want, and I say this directly to the member and her party, is they don't want conflict brought here in order to secure some sort of partisan political advantage. And they also don't want the agency of those people who are responsible for wrongdoing to be dismissed by suggestions which are simply untrue and that seek to gain a short-term domestic political advantage. I am a friend of Israel and I am a friend of the Palestinian people. I think that overwhelmingly has been the position of Australia for a long period of time. With our bipartisan support for a two-state solution, I'll continue to do what I can as Australia's Prime Minister to achieve that end.
Call to the honourable member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. How is the Albanese Labor government ensuring that more Australian families and businesses can access affordable, high-speed internet?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Bennelong for his question and welcome him back to this place where I'm sure he will continue to do very good things. Mr Speaker, the Albanese government's broadband philosophy is simple. We want it reliable, we want it affordable and we want it fast. These are the essential ingredients to boost productivity, create jobs and foster innovation. High-speed connectivity isn't a nice-to-have. In 2025, it is a must-have. And the only way to keep delivering quality broadband to more and more Australians is through our investment in the NBN, the publicly owned NBN. And at the 2022 election, we committed to fund NBN Co to upgrade an additional 1.5 million homes to fibre to the premise. Those upgrades are on track to be completed by year's end and will mean 90% of the NBN fixed-line footprint will be able to access speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second. But there is still more to do, and that's why the government is contributing up to $3 billion for NBN Co to upgrade the final 622,000 premises within the fixed-line footprint from fibre to the node to faster technology. That means ripping up the old coalition copper and replacing it with high-speed, future-proof fibre. The economic benefit of these investments is clear. Having access to faster broadband could save consumers more than 100 hours travel time and $2,850 in costs per year. Labor has always envisaged a full fibre NBN within the fixed-line network, and now we are making that a reality. Of course, the same cannot be said for those opposite. The Coalition opposed the NBN at its inception, calling it a video entertainment system, and then tried to hobble it while in government. Because of those opposite, we are still saddled with a large number of fibre-to-the-node connections, the Coalition copper, and are spending billions of dollars to undo the opposition's short-sightedness. And sadly, nothing has changed when it comes to their connectivity policy. This is not a serious opposition. You only need to look at the media statement released by the Coalition just last Tuesday, where they couldn't even name the right technology. The Coalition media release said the Albanese government committed another $3 billion for the NBN with a further rollout of fibre to the node in January. Here's the thing, though. We're getting rid of fibre to the node. The Coalition copper, we are ripping it up and we are replacing it with future-proof fibre to the premise. The Australian economy as a whole will also benefit from scrapping the Coalition copper, with a suggested cumulative GDP uplift of $10.4 billion over the next decade, because the Albanese government is finishing the job of building the publicly owned NBN.
Call the Prime Minister.
I ask further question placed on the notice paper.